Hello everyone, I'm back. Yes, it's been a very long time since my last story, but that's not because of the method of idea generation that I'm using, but more because I've been working on novels, two novels, sequel to Elena in Exile, and also a science fiction concept, no, not science fiction, what I'm talking about, a kind of horror slash fantasy concept called Legion. So good progress is being made on those, but I have written a short story based on a random title that came from the Magic Hat, which I will bring out later at the end of this. And the story was called Wildernesses. Note the plural. Quick sip of tea. Marvellous. So this is story number 169, and it's called Wildernesses. The call came in before dawn. Another wilderness had appeared, this one on the Kent coast, bisecting the grimy, chic seaside town of Margate. Without warning, as happens with increasing frequency these days, an instantaneous rift had appeared, snatching away a section of our reality and replacing it with an equal volume of another, quite different realm. This is a Class C incident, which is both a good and a bad thing, depending on where you stand. The worst kind, Class A, occur in busy, built-up areas and replace our world with a vacuum of space, which means that anything neighbouring the rift is sucked into it to fill the void. What do they say? Nature abhors a vacuum? It really does. With Class A's, there are a lot of disappearances, and sometimes traumatic dissections or amputations. Surgically precise and instantaneous, though the removal of an arm or leg is, when a wilderness cuts through a human body, the aftermath is no less horrific than it would be at a bomb site or industrial accident. Class B wildernesses occur in built-up areas too, but replace what they steal with something incompatible with human flourishing, like a polygon made of solid iron, or 1 molar sulfuric acid. Some of the Class Bs are worse than the Class As, to be honest. I don't know who created this skill, or what the point of it is. Class Cs occur in urban areas, but replace one zone of breathable space with another theoretically habitable zone, even if its atmosphere takes a while to safely commingle with our own. To qualify as a Class C, there must be no traumatic dissections or vacuum-induced deaths, only disappearances. What happened in this case, our response unit learned in the hastily assembled virtual briefing, was that at 4:15 a.m. a perfect sphere of wilderness appeared in place of a section of Cliftonville and outer Margate, extending a little over a mile out to sea and as far east as Botany Bay, and as far inland as the fields to the north of St. Peter's footpath. The hipster restaurants, bars and vintage clothes shops on the eradicated section of North Down Road are no more, although most of them would have been empty at the time of the incident. Anyone sleeping in the flats above said premises, of course, would now be elsewhere, whereabouts unknown, probably never to return. When I log on, bleary-eyed, only half awake, and still, I suspect, a little drunk from the night before, the briefing is already underway. I can hear our section leader concluding his report before his stern academic visage pops into focus in the middle of my living room screen wall. Early exterior inspections reveal what looks like foliage among the gravelly surface, but so far no signs of life. There was a high oxygen content in the atmosphere, so it didn't cause undue distress for any nearby witnesses, although one woman lost her boyfriend who, she says, refused to leave a party in the intrusion zone because it was out of this world. Although section leader Thornton rarely jokes, this last comment provokes a ripple of glitchy laughter. In my profession, it doesn't pay to take things too seriously, unless it's an emergency instruction from control. We are explorers in a brave new world, and gallows humour is how we cope. Still, we insist on the exosuits, just in case. Please remember to take your odorometers and drone cams on at all times. And that was that. My propensity to hit snooze once too often, even in the face of an inspection alert, does me no favours. I'll have to catch up with Smitty when she picks me up. I'm the closest to Thanet, and Smitty at Dartford is only 20 or so miles further out, so I'm sure her drone car will be with me in under 30 minutes. Just enough time for a shower, some toast and tea, and a quick kit inspection. Exosuit patched in 3 places but basically fine. Personal drone 72% charged, that'll do. Odorometer sterilised, supplied with pH strips and gene tags. Emergency oxygen tanks, 2, good for 50 minutes each. Pulse gun, check. Smitty buzzes onto my lawn 17 minutes later, a record for her. I'm still toweling myself dry when she appears at my front door. I tell her I'm naked and covered in suds and watch her roll her eyes in the video intercom. We have a flirty, will they, won't they sort of deal going on, and ultimately, we probably won't. Probably. I buzz her up and reach for my exosuit. 10 minutes later and I'm suited and booted for our dawn inspection run. We'll do a few circuits in the drone car, and if all seems well, no aliens, no giant ants, no pools of lava just under the topsoil, we'll descend and walk about. Basically, we let our drones and odorometers grab the data and stream it back while we soak up the qualitative experience, as they put it. That's how our employer justifies sending prospectors to what could be their certain deaths, the incomparable value of the lived experience. They vanish, you see, these wildernesses. They're not with us for long. All but 4 of the 3,127 intrusion zones, as they're properly known, that have ever appeared on Earth have shimmered and vanished, replaced with the chunk of planet Earth they temporarily displaced, assuming that chunk still exists, that is. Weirdly, when they do return, most of the displaced zones are devoid of people, as if their inhabitants have been kidnapped or simply erased. Plants, birds, fish and mammals, mosses, trees, flowers, all return generally intact, but the people are gone. Last summer, a section of the city of Vancouver vanished, taking with it over 40,000 people. When it returned, even the bisected buildings largely reassembled, as if their structures simply melted back together on a molecular level. However, the city workers, visitors, and even the homeless people, who, let's face it, were almost invisible to begin with, were absent. It remains a mystery why this should be, and in part, that's why the Intrusion Agency sends in prospectors. We are detectives investigating a comparatively new and alarming phenomenon, one that could disappear us all one day. Conspiracy theories abound, of course. Is the foreign government trying a lethal new weapon? Aliens compiling a human zoo, snatching both Homo sapiens and their natural environments in one instantaneous bite? God doing a kind of product recall? None of these theories has any tangible evidence to support it, but none are radically stranger than what we've observed, so we let them flourish. So why do we do this incredibly dangerous job? Put simply, we prospectors are the least risk-adverse people on the planet. Most of us lack families or loved ones to miss us, should we vanish. Some of us are simply thrill-seekers. Smitty does wingsuiting and spelunking at weekends, while she's not wandering the wildernesses with me. Others of us, like Campbell Brannigan, seem to have a literal death wish. Brannigan holds the record for the most wildernesses visited, 113. He must be a multi-millionaire by now, given how much we get paid per visit. Most of us retire after a dozen or so trips. The average number of wildernesses per prospector, disappearance, is 13. And most of us are rather superstitious about that number. Brannigan sailed blithely past it, just as he did the triple-digit marker that nobody but him has so far crossed. There's a clip from a breakfast TV interview doing the rounds. The peppy, blonde presenter says to an unshaven, bleary-eyed Brannigan, "You've beaten the odds so far, but surely it can't last forever." Brannigan replies, "Then I guess I'll get to see the other side." The crazed glint in his eye suggests he relishes the possibility. I have no such lunatic tendencies. I'm 58 years old. I'm putting away $500,000 to build a tiny home on a Scottish island where I plan to paint and run and swim my way into my 60s. I have 3 more wildernesses to catalogue and I'm there. Smitty's plan is vaguer. She wants to become a full-time adventure influencer, she says. An advenfluencer. What a horrible portmanteau. We're hovering 20 yards away from the Cliftonville side of the intrusion, the technical term we're supposed to use instead of wilderness. We're gliding anti-clockwise around the perimeter of what our readouts tell us is a perfect sphere of alienness, with about 30% of its volume above ground level. There must be some significant power, plumbing and sewage crises happening locally, judging by the number of repair and emergency vehicles parked around the perimeter. As usual, there's a police cordon, but we're waved over it by one of the half-dozen officers in attendance. We've sent the drone cam to do a spiral flyby, starting on the opposite side of the invisible but detectable sphere. There's usually a difference in the magnetic charge of the air particles inside the intrusion, and from that we can create a virtual diagram of the perimeter. We're filming the Cliftonville side with our head cams. I pan up an antiques emporium which is sliced in half like a Victorian doll's house. On the other side of the road, a vacant car wash lot is emptier than ever, its weathered sign reading Deluxe Valette. Spectroscope shows air stabilisation. Slightly higher oxygen content than usual, but otherwise fine, Smitty says, sweeping her henna red hair inside the lightweight plastic helmet as she clicks it onto her suit's neck mount. Smitty's hair is one of the things that gets me unreasonably excited. It contrasts wonderfully with her midnight dark skin. That should sort out my hangover, I joke, struggling to get my own helmet to click into place. Smitty helps me, and her breath partly frosts her helmet as she struggles with the fastening mechanism. I'd be tempted to draw a little love heart in the condensation if it wasn't on the inside of the plastic, and wholly inappropriate. We complete the rest of the checks using the sensors in both the hovercar and the drone cam. There's no detectable radiation, no poisonous gases. The surface seems solid, and nothing is erupting or boiling over. There doesn't seem to be any standing liquid, and the temperature is a balmy 23 degrees, having almost stabilised with the exterior. Needless to say, there are no large mammals, birds, reptiles, or hominids in sight. We still need the pulse guns, though. One of our unit, Mercedes Wilson, was killed last month when a hidden creature half resembling a giant ravioli thrashed out of the sand and zapped her with 1,000,000 volts of piezoelectricity. As this is a comparatively small intrusion, Smitty and I the only prospectors on call. We decide between us to go for the mandatory hour, plus one bonus half hour if there's anything left to record. You get paid double time for bonus minutes, since the chance of a vanishing increased by around 23%, statistically speaking. We're all about the stats, Smitty and I, although we know it's ridiculous to gauge risk on that basis. After all, of the 403 prospectors who've vanished so far, 277 of them did so within the mandatory first hour. Their dependents or nominated causes would have received a compensatory payout, but it's small comfort to know that the mental health charity Mind would benefit significantly from my demise. With all checks completed, we get the go-ahead from Control, who are the recipients of our constant stream of data, and glide down towards the invisible surface of the intrusion sphere. There's a little tinkle that sounds from the hovercar dash as we pass through the boundary, and then we're in an alien world, albeit one, somehow magically fused with our own. The melodic alert is weirdly light-hearted. It's as if Super Mario has secured another spinning coin. One of my pastimes is collecting vintage arcade games. Smitty, who's driving today, sets the hovercar down on a miniature plateau of reddish gravel, surrounded by scrubby green and blue bushes that remind me of rhododendrons. Their leaves have the same waxy quality. A slight breeze rustles them, making a whispering sound that's disconcertingly like human voices. We're landing right in the centre of the intrusion volume, and from our high vantage point we can see nothing but gently undulating red gravel, low-lying bushes and the occasional jagged slab of grey-black rock, each protrusion slanted towards Margate proper. Our hovercam is performing a systematic sweep, spiralling down towards us from inside the perimeter, keeping us at its centre of frame, so that it can warn us of anything potentially hostile approaching. So far, the killer ravioli, a dozen cat-sized spiders, a flying thing resembling a windsock, and a couple of scaly dog mice about the size of a shoe are the only living animals ever recorded during an intrusion. Sentience is comparatively rare, apparently. "Ready to go walk about?" Smitty says. Having had the thumbs up from Control, we flick our headcams onto record, do a final suit and weapons check, and press the door release. Smitty generously lets me Armstrong it onto the surface of intrusion UKKT 103, as it will later be labelled. My boots hit the gravel, which sort of clinks aside as I sink a couple of inches into it. Crouching down, I lift a handful of it to eye level. It's made of something glassy that resembles shattered glass beads. It's pretty, like nothing I've seen on Earth, almost edible looking. "Planet Jellybean," Smitty says, christening this world. We have our own secret nicknames for the places we visited together. Christmas World, that was snowy with a lot of fir trees. Hipsterville, Chrome peppered with clumps of blue moss like rogue beards. Goth City, a forest of dark obsidian shards and knee-high dry ice. We have never seen signs of intelligence, although 2 have so far been recorded. 2 years ago, Brannigan photographed something that looked like an abandoned stone axe head. Then, this January, a prospector in Papua New Guinea filmed a hovering metal sphere which flattened and flickered out of existence when approached. I'll pop some in the odorometer, I say. The term is an inadequate one, since these suitcase-sized mini laboratories can perform microscopic, spectroscopic, and chemical analyses of anything placed within their shoebox-sized interiors. I pour in 2 handfuls of glass beads and a sprig of pseudo-red rhododendron, and the machine begins its analysis. We'll leave it there while we walk. Let's head for that circle of bushes, I suggest. It's the only thing the drone cam feed and our own eyes suggest could be landscaped. Evidence of earthworks or agriculture is considered especially valuable. Literally, indications of intelligent life carry a €200,000 bonus. Smitty nods and skips along beside me. She always seems delighted when we prospect together, like a child visiting Disneyland for the first time. I'm more cautious and pessimistic. I clock watch and count the minutes until we can leave. I don't want to tempt fate. The laws of physics remain constant between the intrusion and our world. I should explain, so it takes just as long to get from the middle of the intrusion as it would to get from halfway along North Down Road to the south side of Dane Park. If we chose, I could have a map of the vanish zone superimposed via augmented reality over the intrusion. I generally prefer not to. The juxtaposition tends to make me feel dizzy. Plus, so far there's never been any discernible connection between the pre- and post-intrusion landscapes in any of the incidents thus recorded. In other words, we aren't seeing the past or future of the same location pushing into our time frame. Whatever all this means, it's less obvious than that. 10 minutes later, we're at the circular copse of bushes. They're taller and skinnier than the pseudo-rhododendrons. They're really trees, and I realise with a start of excitement that it appears to be a perfect circle, with a couple missing from what would otherwise be a circle of 12. It's an entranceway, I remark, as we walk through the gap into the centre of the copse, and the light dims. The trees have long, sharp leaves which seem to clank slightly in the wind, as if they are made of something more metallic than vegetable. That's a civilization bonus in the making, Smitty says, excitedly voicing what's on my mind too. She summons the drone cam, and it whirs down to circle the landscaped clearing, like the delirious final shot of a rom-com or music video. I cut some leaves carefully off one of the trees using my multi-tool. I wish I'd not left the odorometer by our hover car, or we could test the leaves. They do feel very odd in the hand, even through my gloves, which are programmed to transmit every sensation from their exterior to the millions of movable points on the inner layer. The leaves feel partly like plastic and a little like seaweed, but unlike any of the plant life we know on Earth, they also smell faintly of licorice. Might rename this place Wonka World, Smitty muses. Now, where's our chocolate river? I push a couple of the leaves under the waistband of my pulse gun for analysis when we are reunited with the odorometer. We spent another 40 minutes examining every bit of branch, root, leaf and twig on these trees, letting our head cams record as much detail as possible. Then, just as it's time to go back, I make a discovery. I'm walking between opposite trees, using a sensor and laser measure to see if the trunks really are perfectly equidistant from the same central point. If so, that could hardly be coincidental. This grove must have been planted. But by whom and why? My discovery has nothing to do with the trees, but what's at their centre. As I crisscross the circle, the jelly beans under my feet seem to bounce and shift a little more in the middle of the grove than at its edges. There's also a slightly different quality in the sound my footsteps make, a suggestion of reverb. Smitty, this is hollow, I mouthed, tapping her shoulder. What is? Under our feet. Here, help me dig. Using our multi-tools, we begin to scrape back the red, glassy pebbles until we reveal something remarkable beneath, a perfectly circular, smooth metal disc set into the gravel, around 3 feet in diameter. There's an unfamiliar purplish sheen to it. A hatch, I say, trying to dig beneath it, until Smitty rests a gloved hand on my shoulder. Wait, what if it's a mine or something? I reckon it would have gone off when I stood on it, I say, with very little reason behind my assertion. Look at this place. People are meant to come in here, and go, down there. I point to the circular portal, for that's what I'm sure it is. Might just be a well or a burial site, Smitty says. She's trying to persuade herself to support my incautious archaeology. She's just as fascinated as I am. This isn't about an intelligence, life, or civilization bonus. We've surely won those already. No, this is pure human curiosity. And right now we both feel like Howard Carter at the tomb of Tutankhamun. We both crouch and dig our multi-tools around the edge of the disc, locating a rim and feeling around it for some sort of catch. After a few minutes of trying to twist or lever the hatch open, we're about to admit defeat when there's a tiny hiss, as of escaping air under pressure. The hatch suddenly revolves by 90 degrees and shoots up into the air at surprising speed. We both rock back on our heels, Smitty falling onto her back as the lid flies up into the air and stops, floating perfectly still and seemingly unsupported around 9 feet above the ground. I help Smitty up and jump to try to grab the lid. I manage to get both hands on either side of it, but dangle there, making Smitty laugh. It doesn't move an inch. There's no visible sign of propulsion or support. I realize I'm hanging above an impenetrably dark hole. I swing myself back and forth, then leap to land beside it. My left leg plunges into darkness and I yank it back out as if afraid of it being bitten off. I grin at Smitty, downplaying a moment of panic. We stand looking at the floating lid, speculating on what's holding it there. Magnetism is ruled out, no such readings emanate from it. Then we shine our multi-tools on torch setting down into the gloomy interior of the space beneath. The beams vanish into shiny blue-black metallic darkness without hitting any discernible surface. If we had a rope, I begin, we could tie it to a tree, make some sort of platform, Smitty adds. You could lower me in, I say. She laughs. What, me hold your weight? Hardly. We don't have a rope, I add unnecessarily. There isn't anything like that in the hovercar either. We should always carry a rope, I decide, frustrated. Shit, Smitty says. She's looked to her wrist to read 12 missed messages from control. They bleep to communicate anything important when you're prospecting. They don't interrupt using helmet speakers. Excess noise is believed to be poor protocol. Smitty and I have been mouthing our words to one another. We've become pretty good lip readers. She flicks through her messages, as do I. Time warnings mostly, since we're now just 7 minutes from the end of our allotted 90. After 30 bonus minutes, you're no longer insured in any way, apparently. It's not safe to continue. In addition, although we could probably breathe the air inside the intrusion, we aren't allowed to remove our helmets, in case there are airborne viruses, microbes, or fungi. Plus, my inner statistician tells me that 90 minutes puts this wilderness into the red zone, giving it a 20% chance of vanishing at any moment. We had better haul ass, in other words. Even if our time weren't about to run out, the last 3 messages are all variations on, do not open that hatch. We jog lightly back to the hovercar, collect and empty the odorometer, and speed through the takeoff protocols as our drone cam circles us. We manage to get outside the sphere perimeter with 4 minutes to spare. We half expect the intrusion to vanish when our 90 minutes is up, but of course it doesn't. We land in the middle of North Down Road, and as we get out of the hovercar for a breath of fresh earth air and a debrief, Smitty turns to me with a shocked expression. My pulse gun! I left it behind! You what? I cry, incredulous. Leaving anything behind but footprints is absolutely verboten. A €10,000 fine and a written warning at the least. It was digging into my side when we were working on the hatch. I laid it down for a moment. It was in the shade of the tree. I panic, looking at my wrist read. We're 4 minutes over time. 10 minutes would have cost us another fine. I'll attach the grabber to the drone cam and send it back in, I suggest. That'll take too long, she says, and it might fail. Look, we have 5 minutes. There's time. Okay, I'll go, I offer. You've taken off your helmet and gloves, she points out. I'm still suited. Listen, time me. I'll be back in 4. Before I can answer, Smitty has jumped back in the hovercar and gunned the engine. She's the fastest flyer I know, but 4 minutes there and back, including grabbing the gun, is pushing it. I launch the drone cam to film her. As the hovercar diminishes to a buzzing speck in the sky above the red gravel disc, I speed it towards her, trying to catch up. I tell myself a fine and a stern talking to for exceeding the insurance cutoff isn't so bad, but then remember Smitty's on her last warning. They'll boot her from the program for sure if she fails. By the time the drone cam reaches Smitty, she's holding the gun and climbing back into the hovercar. She almost gets the door closed before there's a telltale shimmer and a whooshing sound, and the image breaks up into a whirl of static. At the same time, there's a shattering of reality as the landscape 20 yards in front of me slams back into a familiar tarmac thoroughfare studded with restaurants and shops. North Down Road has returned, devoid of its inhabitants, but otherwise identical to when it vanished in the early hours. A trickle of brick dust wafts down from where the Antiques Emporium has re-knitted, a few millimetres of reality subsidence creating a microscopic mismatch. Beneath my feet, water pipes will be forced back together, creating tiny fissures that will have to be resoldered. Dozens of bisected earthworms will be reunited. Perhaps some of them will live. Smitty has gone. I realise this with a terrible certainty as Control's insistent beeping and the chatter from my wrist read goes unheeded. They are desperately trying to debrief me. I switch off my direct line to Control and slump down onto the tarmac inside the police cordon, while officers shout at me and there's a general panic-stricken hubbub. This was going to be my third last wilderness, but I suspect I'll be signing up for another contract soon. Perhaps I'll follow her, my flame-haired adventurer. Probably I won't. I need an hour to myself. I've heard there's a massive tide pool nearby. Maybe a dip in the icy ocean will clear my head. I need to cry. I doubt I'll be able to. I think she has a sister. I'll go for a swim and then call Control for Smitty's sister's details. I might be the only person who can explain her choices to them. I can't explain mine to myself. Something is poking me in the side. I reach for the clasp to loosen my gun belt, and something floats and clinks to the ground. 3 waxy, pointed alien leaves from the wilderness that just vanished. Bringing back samples is a fireable offence. I drop to a crouch as if tying my shoelace and stuff the leaves inside my jacket. They are souvenirs, and they'll remind me of Smitty. Better than a fridge magnet, I think, smiling ghoulishly to no one but myself. And there you go. Rather a long, complicated, strange sci-fi story. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you did. If anyone's watching this YouTube channel, I would very much appreciate finding out, because honestly, I have no idea. And now it's time for the new ritual that I've developed, which is choosing the title for the next story. Here's the magic hat. This is full of random words and phrases that I wrote a year ago, I think, or maybe 9 months ago. So I have no idea what's in here. But this is going to be the title of the next story. I'll show it to you. It says, Things I Wish I'd Said. Interesting. Okay. This is probably a breakup story. Might not be. Could be all sorts of things. I don't think I want to write another sci-fi thing. But we'll see. I'll think about this, and I will, of course, come back to you with the new story. Now, for any of you who somehow don't know, I have published a range of books. And these are the 2 that I would recommend. If you like my stories, get yourself a copy of The Museum of Forgotten Toys, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Waterstones possibly might even be able to send you a copy of this. And my crime novel, my debut crime novel, Elena in Exile, currently shortlisted for a major competition. Both of these books are available on Amazon. Check them out. And I'll see you again very soon. Thank you.